inside the 10. Carr tips it in, and it's Ward. He spins into the end zone for the touchdown. Watching greatness on one end in LeBron. There's a dude with 35 in white getting it done defensively, and then offense taking over the fighter. Mama, there goes that man.
They have shared a brilliant championship battle, but the championship can only be won by one, and it's going Dutch in 2021. Max Verstappen, for the first time ever, is champion of the world.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to this week's edition of the Waterboy Experience. And it happens to be a very happy edition of the Waterboy Experience because this is the 1-year anniversary of this mess of a podcast. We're going to talk about the NFL draft, nondescript motorsports, MotoGP, all that kind of stuff, and Formula One. And then we'll finish it all with an interview with me and Jason about how we think the podcast did. Here to join me in all of that, I couldn't have done it without him. 1 year, the CEO and CFO of Nye Productions, the Red Bull chugging son of a gun since day one, Mr. Jason Shaddix. Jason, how are you, man?
You would think that after a year of doing this, we would actually be prepared, we would do this in one take, and that the production value would be even better. It is better, but it's not the greatest.
No, some things never change. I mean, and this is our second time redoing this intro, so just for the record. Well, do you want to just jump right in where we left off? I mean, it's kind of fitting. For the first episode we ever did, we reviewed the NFL draft. Let's review the NFL draft again. What do you say?
If we have to, let's do it.
Let's do it. So, the number one overall pick was for the Carolina Panthers, and the quarterback out of Alabama was Bryce Young that was selected. And number two, the Houston Texans select C.J. Stroud, the quarterback out of Ohio State. Quite honestly, I think these were interchangeable. Personally, I think C.J. Stroud was the better quarterback out of the two. So I was a little confused why the Carolina Panthers didn't go with C.J. Stroud, but I understand why. I think the Carolina Panthers will put a good bit of weapons around Bryce Young, and the same with C.J. Stroud. And these two guys, I really hope that they can be franchise quarterbacks for both of these guys. For both of these teams, I mean. So, yeah, what are your thoughts on these two first picks?
If you want my honest opinion, I think that this year's draft class was not the strongest we've ever seen. And quite frankly, the only reason they got drafted is because those two teams needed a quarterback after last year's debacle. I mean, they got picked. They're the best of the bunch, but they don't impress me enough. And, like, right now, coming from Alabama, it's not the highest honor it has been in the past. Right now, they've been doing quite shit, and maybe Alabama will start winning after they get rid of this guy.
Would you say that Alabama is the Mercedes of college football?
Yes, because they lost the title in 2021, right? Alabama lost to Georgia, and Mercedes lost to Red Bull. So it's full circle right there. Right now, Mercedes is shit. And we're going to talk about that, and specifically about George Russell. And Alabama, well, didn't they lose to like a major upset victory for somebody who beat Alabama?
I believe you're thinking of Georgia. Oh, no, you're talking about last year when they lost to Tennessee, which we'll get to that.
Yeah, and they had didn't they take the goalpost and it was just swimming down the Tennessee River?
Yep. We did like a whole 20-minute segment on this. You remember that?
Now I remember. But yeah, they're the Mercedes, and right now they're not doing good. And like I said, the only reason they picked those two guys was because, well, they needed a quarterback, just the same as Anthony Richardson, who was picked number...
Anthony Richardson, he was picked at number 4 by the Colts. But we'll get to that.
Yeah, he was picked by the Colts. The Colts needed a quarterback. I mean, the Colts, the team that, for the final few games, they had a coach who, has never coached anything higher than high school football. And yet on his debut coaching game, he beat the Las Vegas Raiders. I always have to find a way to put that in, just rub the wound right there.
Yeah, you'll always find a way to bring that up. But we're going to keep on moving here with the first round of the NFL draft. The Houston Texans made a monumental trade up to get defensive end Will Anderson from Alabama. Moving on, we're going to go to the number 4 overall pick, who I hoped the Las Vegas Raiders would get. Quarterback Anthony Richardson out of Florida was selected by the Indianapolis Colts. I didn't like it, but I also like it. You know what I mean? This was a really good pickup for the Colts. Like you mentioned, they needed a quarterback. This guy is the most unique quarterback in the draft. I feel like he was a good choice for the Colts, and he can hopefully be their franchise guy. With the number 5 overall pick, the Seattle Seahawks select Devin Witherspoon. How did Alicia eat her yogurt? With her spoon. It's not Alicia. Was it Alicia Witherspoon? No, it's not Alicia Witherspoon. Witherspoon? Renee Witherspoon? Somebody ate yogurt Witherspoon. But yeah, he's a cornerback out of Illinois. He was one of the best available defensive players in the draft. Watching the film, I think, he leaves a little bit to be desired. To see him go this high in the first round, I was a little bit shocked. But, overall, I think this is a good pick. Maybe the Seattle Seahawks are looking to rebuild the Legion of Boom. Maybe. I don't know. Number 6 overall, the Arizona Cardinals, who traded down from the Houston Texans' 3rd overall pick. Paris Johnson, offensive tackle out of Ohio State. Probably the best offensive lineman available in this draft. That's all I got to say. It's all about protecting Kyler Murray, right? And the number 7th overall pick, the Las Vegas Raiders selected Tyree Wilson, defensive end out of Texas Tech. Now, at first, I was really iffy on this. And, given that Jalen Carter was still available in this draft, given that Christian Gonzalez was still available, and there were a lot of needs that we still needed to fill, I wasn't too sure about this one. Did some research on him, watched the film. He might be the best, fundamentally, the best pass rusher in this draft. So I'm a little hyped for him. I'll just give an overall view of the draft for the Raiders. It was okay. It was what it was. But Tyree Wilson at number 7 for the Las Vegas Raiders. At number 8, the Atlanta Falcons selected Bijan Robertson, running back out of Texas. Pretty good pick. Atlanta's in that rebuilding stage. Enough said. At number 9, probably the best defensive tackle in this draft, Jalen Carter from Georgia was selected to the Philadelphia Eagles, who are coming off of a previous Super Bowl appearance, which was huge for them, and they're trying to get back to that point. Obviously, one of those big problems that were in the Super Bowl was stopping the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes. Jalen Carter can only help because, I think he is one of the best defensive players in this draft. And enough said. I wanted him. But there is a little thing. He also has some attitude things, but I feel like I have a lot of faith in him. I think he can recover from that. And, maybe we'll see the Eagles come back through and make another Super Bowl appearance. Darnell Wright, offensive tackle from Tennessee, was selected 10th overall by the Chicago Bears. Peter Skoronski was selected by the Tennessee Titans for the 11th overall pick. Now, here's a little bit of a controversial one. I didn't see the Detroit Lions at 12th overall going Jahmyr Gibbs, running back out of Alabama. But the longer this draft went on, the more it made a little bit of sense. It was a good little pickup for them. Lucas Van Ness, linebacker out of Iowa, went to the Packers at the 13th overall pick. 14th overall pick was Broderick Jones, offensive tackle out of Georgia by the Pittsburgh Steelers. Will McDonald to the Jets at 15. Manuel Forbes to the Commanders at 16. Christian Gonzalez, who, by the way, I believe was the best defensive back in this draft. I really wanted him. He ended up going to the Patriots at the 17th overall pick. The Lions struck yet again in the first round at Jack Campbell, the linebacker out of Iowa. I think this is a great pick because I love Jack Campbell, and I think he's the best linebacker that was available in this draft. Me personally, Kalijah Cansey went to the Buccaneers at 19 overall. Jason Smith-Njigba, wide receiver out of Ohio State, went to the Seattle Seahawks. It's just another weapon for Geno Smith. You got DK Metcalf over there already. This is going to be a good addition. Quentin Johnson, wide receiver out of TCU, went 21 overall to the Los Angeles Chargers. Zay Flowers, wide receiver out of Boston College, went 22nd overall to the Baltimore Ravens. Jordan Adenson went 23rd overall to the Vikings. Deontay Banks, New York Jets. Dalton Kincaid, Bills. Mozzie Smith, Cowboys. Anton Harrison, Jaguars. Miles Murphy to the Bengals. Brian Burress to the Saints. Nolan Smith to the Falcons again. And Felix Anduki Uzoma, that was a mouthful, went to the Kansas City Chiefs. And that was the first round. Overall, this was a pretty good draft. I'm not going to go over any other picks in the draft, really. Will Levis was picked actually very late in this draft. But that was basically the NFL draft overall for the Detroit Lions. Not too bad. The Las Vegas Raiders, not too good. I can't say anything else about it. We'll see how this goes. The past several first round picks we've had have not really panned out, besides Josh Jacobs. But anyway, what was your overall thoughts of the draft? I know you said not a lot of players stood out to you, but yeah, what are your thoughts?
I think that the Lions did pretty decent. I think that, we might have a decent team, get a few wins, maybe not a playoff spot, fingers crossed, but a lot of teams pick, what I felt like maybe wasn't absolutely necessary. And yeah, that's pretty much my thoughts, other than the Will guy. He made the rounds, and I'm like, what's up with this guy? And everybody in the comments section was like, thank God we didn't pick, like their team didn't pick him. And I'm like, well, fuck. I do have to mention this, and I thought it was hilarious. The 49ers pick a kicker for their first round pick. I'm like, what? You're choosing to get a kicker as your first choice. Like, don't get me wrong, every team needs a good kicker, but at the same time, that's telling me one or two things. Either one, you've got a solid team and you can waste picks like they're nothing, or two, somebody is stupid enough to choose a kicker as a first round pick. Because trust me, that kid would have been around after a few rounds. So I don't know what they're doing. So yeah, that's pretty much just my thoughts.
As a Raider fan, I can't really speak much to selecting a kicker in the first round. But, it's not the best. It's not the best idea. They'll always fall to the later rounds. But anyway. So yeah, let's go on to what did you have? What did you have this week? MotoGP?
We've got a lot of stuff, but due to possibly time constraints, because we are recording this a little bit too late, yeah, I'm not going to talk about everything I was originally going to talk about. I was going to talk about the 6 hours of Spa and I think it was the start of the European Le Mans series. But I will add this little quick tidbit. Essentially, the Le Mans series is in regional it's a regional endurance championship series, and the winner of each of the categories, so LMP2 and GTE, the winner and the runner-up will get a guaranteed spot at the next year's 24 hours of Le Mans. And I just thought that was pretty cool. And we used to have one, except, it's America, so people don't really watch real race cars race around. So, but anyway, let's get started with the nondescript motorsport news. And you are right, we are talking about MotoGP. So it's not a race. Honestly, I did not check if there was a race this past weekend. I don't think there was, but it's just some news that I found. So this year was supposed to be the longest calendar year for MotoGP with an unprecedented 21 rounds, but FIM, F-I-M, it's essentially the Federation of Motorcycles, the FIA for motorcycles, has announced that they will be dropping the Kazakhstan Grand Prix after the event organizers determined that the track could not be completed on time. This now leaves a 5-week gap between the Dutch TT and the British Grand Prix, Currently, plans are to have the Grand Prix enter the calendar in 2024. This also marks the 5th year in a row that events have been canceled in MotoGP. It all began with the Finnish Grand Prix being canceled from 2019 through 2022, with it finally being put down after the track owners went into financial problems. Fortunately for MotoGP fans, the inaugural race in India will continue as scheduled. And I had this marked in case you forgot, and you did forget it, but in NFL news...
Wait. NFL news? This is my thing.
That's true, but you forgot to mention this, and I remember, and I told you, remember this, motherfucker. So, Lamar Jackson has finally come to an agreement with the Ravens, with Lamar Jackson signing the biggest contract in NFL history, with it being bigger than Jalen Hurts, who for a little bit had the biggest contract. But Lamar Jackson signed a 5-year deal for $260 million, which means he's going to be making around $52 million a year, including $185 million guaranteed. That is fucking ridiculous. That's a lot of money that you're spending on just one player. Granted, he's really good, but did he go to the Super Bowl? Did he win the Super Bowl? No. Like, I know a lot of people are like, well, the Super Bowl is not the end all and be all. And I'm like, yeah, it is. That's the whole point of the NFL season. Let's see who's good enough. Yeah, that's why you play, to go to the Super Bowl. And I don't think he's worth $52 million a year. What are your thoughts?
Look, I think Lamar Jackson is one of the more talented players in the league today. Jalen Hurts, I was questioning whether he deserved the contract he got because he lost in the Super Bowl. Now we're giving Lamar that kind of money. And I'm like, okay, let's rear it back a little bit here. Lamar's good. Jalen's good. Do they deserve that much? And with them getting paid that amount of money, what are you going to do as far as options? Now you have to pay less for your wide receivers and your tight ends and your running backs. It narrows your options down a little bit because like a Devontae Adams who's making $20+ million a year wouldn't want to go there, and you can't financially afford it. So that was my question. And I can understand signing Lamar Jackson to this contract because he wanted to leave, and if you're the Baltimore Ravens, you want to keep him there at all costs. But is he worth it? We'll see. Time will tell.
Well, time has been told, and we've seen his record. Yeah, he's a really good quarterback, but I think that money's just going to go to waste. Yeah. And now it also explains why he went to talking to other teams, and other teams said, no, stay away from us. That's a lot of money. That's why the Raiders didn't pick him up. Can you guys even afford $52 million a year?
No, we'd rather go with a washed-up quarterback who used to play backup on a Super Bowl team. Yeah, we'd rather do that. Spent the majority of his career as a backup. We'd just rather go with that. That's a safe option there.
Anyway, we are going to move on to the second thing that Davis forgot. And it's something that's been rumored for months now. And finally, on April the 24th, it was officially announced that Aaron Rodgers has been traded to the New York Jets. In the trade, Green Bay gets, and I mean, now we know what the pick was, but they got a number 13 pick, 42 and 207, and and this is the interesting one, and a 2024 conditional second round pick that can become a first round pick. The Jets got a number 15 pick along with a 170 pick, with Aaron Rodgers coming along too. And I thought, wow, it's been rumored. They finally did it. They hired Aaron Rodgers, and he's gone to a team that's green. And already this year,
Green, I get it.
I think you're thinking of a different thing. I'm thinking Fernando Alonso going to Aston Martin, green. But yeah, he did go to another green team. And I hope he doesn't do well, because otherwise I may have to apologize like I apologize for questioning the great Fernando Alonso. But yeah, what are your thoughts on Aaron Rodgers? I mean, let's be honest. We talked about it a lot recently. It's been rumored around, but give your final thoughts. What do you think?
Well, I mean, I have no doubt he'll win several football games. It's just a matter of the biggest question is when he gets to the playoffs, can he make it happen from there? Can he turn that into a Super Bowl win? Can he turn that into even an AFC championship? As far as quarterbacks, the AFC is stacked. You've got, I hate to say it, Patrick Mahomes. You've got Joe Burrow. You've got Justin Herbert, Lamar Jackson. I'd even throw Trevor Lawrence in there. I mean, he's got a lot of heavy competition against him. And can he keep up with all that? Time will tell. But I definitely think he's going to win several football games with him. Just it's a matter of, once they get in the playoffs, how can he do? Is he going to do the same thing he did with the Packers where they make it and then they drop the ball? We'll see.
You want to know how much he's going to get paid this year for the Jets after they did the contract and all of that? Because remember, he got a deal in March of 2023 for 3 years, about $158 million.
I'm going to guess about $51 million.
Nope. He is getting the bare minimum of about $1.2 million. So in 2024, when the final year comes, he is making a total of $107.55 million.
Jeez.
And we thought the Baltimore Ravens paid a lot.
Yeah. Well, you got to think he's getting paid by two different teams.
That's true. But we're still going to keep on the topic of the NFL, and this is news from last week, which obviously we didn't do an episode last week because whenever we need content, there's never any fucking content.
But then hours after we decide, we're not going to record, something happens.
Not just something, a bunch of things happen, and we're like, fuck, we could have done a fucking episode with that shit. Or it's like, it's all put into one day. Like, I wanted to do World Endurance Championship, and I'm like, fuck, we don't got enough time. But anyway, this is actually something for you.
Me?
Yes. So, in an interview by the Las Vegas Journal Review, Mark Davis was asked his thoughts on the Oakland A's coming to Las Vegas, and he said, quote, "I won't forget what they did to us in Oakland. They squatted on our lease for 10 years and made it impossible for us to build on that stadium. They were looking for a stadium. We were looking for a stadium. They didn't want to build a stadium and then went ahead and signed a 10-year lease with the city of Oakland and said, 'We're the base team.' They marketed the team as rooted in Oakland. That's been their mantra through the whole thing. The slogan they've been using have been a slap to the face of the Raiders. They were trying to win over that type of mentality in the Bay Area. Well, all they did was fuck the Bay Area." He also said that he had no issue with the players themselves, and it was just the management. Currently, the A's are looking to build a 30,000 seat capacity stadium with a retractable roof that is estimated to cost $1.5 billion. So, what do you think about what Mark Davis had to say about the A's?
Well, Mark Davis isn't the smartest man on the planet, but he does know when he's been fucked over. And I mean, it's true. The Oakland Athletics, they fucked us out of a new stadium in Oakland. So then everybody freaked out like, oh, well, why didn't we stay? Why did the Vegas Raiders leave? Or why did the Oakland Raiders leave? Well, it's because one, the team, two, the city. The city was loyal to the baseball team when in reality, the money was being made from the NFL team. Granted, we sucked, but as far as merchandise and all that kind of stuff, we were making that money. And the Oakland Athletics, before this whole thing even started, did you even know that the Oakland Athletics were a thing?
No, not really.
Exactly. So, let's face it, they're not a very good baseball team either. We're not a very good NFL team. And might I also mention Patrick Mahomes, before his NFL career started, he was drafted to the Oakland Athletics. Just a little fun fact. So, yeah, and I mean, I've heard rumors about them wanting to move to Vegas. I hope Vegas keeps them out. I hope they're just like, no, like, stay away from here. Like, the ownership of that team is toxic. So, good for Mark Davis for standing up for himself.
Well, unfortunately, it's a done deal, I think. But something interesting, I was listening to a podcast, the 605 Super Podcast. They did a opening day episode, opening Star Wars Day, they call it. And they actually were talking about that. And one of the things they said, well, it doesn't matter if they move from Oakland to Las Vegas, the team is still being managed by the same shitty management. And apparently their problem is they're not opening up their wallets enough to get the players. So all those players that are good or something like that, or that they're in the minor leagues and, you know, other teams see that they're good, they hire them to like 10-year, $100 million contract, and the A's aren't pulling up the money. And so they were talking about how it's not going to matter, and they can't even fill up the Oakland A's stadium right now. Like, for a team that's supposed to, like, the Oakland Raiders had a very passionate fan base, and they still do. They followed the Raiders. Of course, many of them can't really afford to go to the Raiders game, but they're very loyal fans. That's something that's been established. For the A's in the last few years, they can barely get 10,000 people into that stadium. And isn't that stadium like a 40,000 seat capacity stadium?
Yeah, I mean, it's not very big, but it's about 40,000.
So $40,000 seat capacity stadium. It explains why they're only doing 30,000. But another thing that's been screwing over the fans, and it's also one of the major reasons why it's been driving away the fans, is they've been raising the ticket prices. It's now so ridiculously expensive to go to an Oakland A games compared to how it used to be just a few years ago, that a lot of fans are saying, look, right now the economy is fucking shit. We can't afford to go to the Oakland A games. And even if we could, why go to such a shitty team?
And might I add, the whole reason why we left is because that stadium is falling apart. It's a shitty stadium to go to watch a shitty baseball team, and you're paying that much money. It's not worth it. And I feel like they've honestly lost a lot of fans because of that, just because, it's a shitty stadium, shitty team, the laughing stock of the MLB.
That's true. And also, Oakland itself, the city, isn't doing a lot to keep teams. I mean, think about it. The Raiders left Oakland. Yeah, the Golden State Warriors actually moved from Oakland itself to actually just be in San Francisco. So right now, when the A's leave, that's it. There's no major league team there anymore. But anyway, that has been enough, NFL news and nondescript motorsport news. Let's get talking to Formula One news, and we're gonna start this off light, and then we're just gonna keep moving and going like deeper until we get to like the actual race itself. So here's something interesting. Formula One has abandoned their plans to introduce LED wheel covers that were set to be introduced in 2024. Last year in Abu Dhabi, McLaren was actually testing them out, but unfortunately, the teams decided against it as they could not afford to have any more weight on the car as it is. Now, moving on, and this is another big news that happened. AlphaTauri team principal Franz Tost announced this past week that he will be stepping down at the season end. Tost had been in charge of the Red Bull sister team since it was first purchased from Minardi back in 2006. Under his leadership, the team has scored a litany of points, multiple podiums, and even 2 race wins. Unfortunately, the downward spiral that AlphaTauri has gone since the introduction of ground effect has made many people question the point of Red Bull having a second team. Rumors have been going around that Red Bull have been giving offers to sell the team, with one saying that someone was offering up to $800 million. For now, Red Bull appears to be content with having the team on the field. To what purpose, I'm not really sure, as their fashion label, which the team is named after, hasn't really seen a big surge in popularity. What we do know is who is going to replace him, and that is Ferrari sporting director Laurent Mekies. Mekies had been part of AlphaTauri since way back in 2002 when he was a race engineer for Minardi, and after it became Toro Rosso, he was promoted to chief engineer. He left the team in 2014, and he was made a sporting director by Ferrari in 2019. Now, what I think is an interesting thing to note is that he was the second in command of the prancing horse. He's leaving only a few months after Fred Vasseur was put in charge, which makes me think, okay, you're going from being the second in command to being the team principal for AlphaTauri, which, granted, you're going from second to first, But at the same time, at least Ferrari can guarantee a few race wins or very good positions. Right now, AlphaTauri is the worst team on the grid. They've become the new Williams. And so maybe he thinks he can, take the team back to maybe win another race, get a few more podiums, get points, which I would love to see that, but it's just really hard to do, especially with a team like that. The last few years, they've been trying to, be as far away from Red Bull in development, like trying to be unique. And this year, they've actually started to adopt more of Red Bull's designing principle. So that's an interesting thing to note. And another thing was the hiring of Fred something that made this guy go, well, I don't want to work with Fred, or I don't want to work under Fred because, it was a jealousy that he got the job and I didn't as second in command? Or was it simply he doesn't believe in it? Or again, it could be he just wanted the team principal position. But yeah, that's something that's going on for AlphaTauri.
Are there any principles or design ideas that he's going to bring in from Ferrari to AlphaTauri to help out? Or do you think it's mostly going to be influenced by Red Bull?
It's mostly going to be influenced by Red Bull. We've already seen this. The suspension. I can't remember what type of suspension that Red Bull has, but I know AlphaTauri didn't have that same suspension last year, and this year they are adopting it. And they're also, as much as great is, they're having to adopt that Red Bull style. And even though this guy's coming from Ferrari, they're going to want to go with a more Red Bull style because, let's be frank, that style is working compared to Ferrari right now. So maybe he can come up with something, but it's definitely going to be Red Bull influenced. Anyway, moving on. Oh, you're going to love this. I thought this was quite hilarious. During the massive break that we've had in Formula One, Charles Leclerc released a song that was actually in the top 10 charts on iTunes worldwide, beating Miley Cyrus' latest single.
What? He released a song?
He didn't even sing. He was just playing piano. And he became, top 6. Granted, he didn't last long there. Like, last time I checked, he was like number 9. But still, he's made a song that has been in the top 10 chart in the world on iTunes at the very least.
Suck on that, Taylor Swift.
You had to go there. Look, this podcast is supposed to be about sport news, not tabloid rumors, but if you want to talk about it, let's fucking talk about it. All right. So the last week, there's been huge rumors about Fernando Alonso dating Taylor Swift. And everybody's like, is it true? Is it going on? The entire weekend, everybody has made, when regarding to Fernando Alonso, references to Taylor Swift music, with Will Buxton going, maybe you're in a blank space and da-da-da-da. And commentators were doing it on an international feed. And I'm just like, really? And Fernando's not saying so. Like, Fernando isn't saying if it's true or not. He's kind of like winking at the camera. So either he is dating Taylor Swift, or as you like to put it, Taylor Swift is dating him, or he's just playing, or it's false and he's just playing the camera. I've heard that it just started as a rumor. It just started as a joke on Twitter, and then Tumblr blew it up, and then everybody said, oh, it's true. So I don't know who to believe. Maybe he is. Maybe he isn't. I don't know.
Or maybe this whole rumor being started would instigate it, and then it will actually come to fruition. But I don't know.
But yes, that has been your tabloid rumor of the week. All right, so I think I got one more thing before we start with the actual the review of the weekend. But the Galactic Empire of Mercedes has announced that they will be swapping Mike Elliott from technical director to technical officer, as James Allison will be taking over the role as director. Allison used to hold the spot before stepping down in 2021 for personal reasons. He's essentially the guy who looks at the car and tells the team to research this or improve that. And with this shakeup, Mercedes hope that they can return to their winning ways after their disappointment of a season that they had last year and are having this year. It also says that Mercedes put their faith in the wrong man. And now the question is, can Allison do enough in a quick manner of time to catch up to the Red Bulls and Aston Martins? because he's got a lot of catching up to do. And if the rumors are right, the Mercedes might be starting from scratch if they ditch the zero pod concept. And meanwhile, other teams will be advancing their already quick cars. So that's the big thing. Can Mercedes, fix up their mistake? I don't know if they can or not. I kind of hope they do so that, Lewis and Max can have a few more fights. But yeah, that's going on right now. James Allison made the fastest, will help design, the fastest Formula One car of all time. So yeah, from 2017 through 2021, that's when he was in charge, and that's when they were winning a lot by quite a bit. So what do you think?
I don't think it's the car. I think it's the drivers. I think Lewis Hamilton is done. George Russell is in.
I think it's the cars.
We'll get to George Russell in a minute, but
oh my God, yes we will. But let's get started with this bullshit. All right. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Formula One is back with the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. And to make up for the lack of racing, Formula One has brought the sprint race to Baku, but this time they've tweaked it. Normally, as we've seen in the last 2 seasons, the sprint race has been held on a Saturday instead of the usual qualifying. On Friday, it was FP1 and qualifying to determine the grid for Saturday, and then the result of the sprint race determined the grid for Sunday. This time around, though, qualifying on Friday will be to determine the grid for the Grand Prix on Sunday. On Saturday, we're getting a different qualifying for the sprint race called Sprint Shootout. It's almost the same as normal qualifying, but this time the sessions are shorter and the drivers will have to use the medium tires for Q1 and Q2, but in Q3 they have to use the soft compound tires. This is a new format that F1 is test trialing to determine if they should replace the current qualifying format as to ensure that there's even more of a shakeup between the teams. And also, I gotta add this. If you run out of brand new soft tires before the sprint shootout, if you manage to get into Q3, you cannot race in Q3. You cannot set a time because you have to use brand new soft tires. So there was actually 2 people who ran out of brand new soft tires, and that was Lando Norris and Yuki Tsunoda, which, spoiler, neither of them got into Q3, SQ3.
I want to get your overall thoughts on this new process that they're trying out. Is it a good idea, or is it really not?
Alex Albon said it best. This is just something that's going to benefit the big teams, and we really don't have any incentive for the smaller teams. And that's true because there's only 8 positions that are given points. P1 gets 8 points, and then it goes down until P8, and they get 1 point. And you can damage your car. And we actually saw this because in SQ1, Logan Sargent, he set a pretty great time and he made it into Q2. But when he was setting up one final flying lap, he crashed the car into turn 15 because one of the Ferrari was in the way, but the mechanics did not have enough time to rebuild that car to send him out for the sprint race. So for his first sprint race, literally could not race in the sprint race. So I'm just going to move on to sprint race. When they start racing, Max Verstappen at this point was actually was in P3, with Checo being in P2. And when they're going into the first corner, you know what happens? George Russell got off to a good start, so he's right next to Max, and he tries to fight Max. And then going into the second corner, George Russell is too close to Max, and he turns in on Max. And he makes a giant hole in the side pod, and Max just could not catch up to Checo or Charles. He was losing so much time to that giant hole. And when George Russell got ahead of him, and when he finally passed George, his race engineer said to Max, "Well, look at that, you did it and it was clean." And he's like, "Yeah, because I actually know how to race." And you mentioned this earlier, and I'm going to quote it. Russell says, "I didn't do it on purpose, mate. I had no grip. I locked up." And Max responded by saying, "We all have no grip. We all need to leave a little bit of space." And then Russell turned around and walked away, and Verstappen said, "Well, next time expect the same, dickhead." So Max was really pissed off at George for what he did. And, a lot of people are saying, Max shouldn't have done that. Max was in the wrong. But I got to say this. Max was kind of right in saying this and doing this because this is not the first time that George Russell has turned in on somebody and has blamed it on the other person. Do we have to remind you of Singapore 2022 or Imola with Valtteri Bottas in 2021?
Let's not make Max Verstappen out to be an angel here. He's turned in on a few people in his career, hasn't he?
One in particular. And that same person has done the same to Max.
And we all know who that was.
Exactly. But like I said, this is not the first time George Russell has done this. And I'm not just saying this because I'm a Max Verstappen fan. I said this when he did it in Singapore to Mick Schumacher. The announcer said, "No, George, that was your fault. You turned in on him. What the fuck are you expecting?" Look, I have liked George Russell for a very long time. I was like, let's go, George. You're taking that shitbox Williams and you're putting it where it shouldn't be. You're doing the impossible, and you're a really great racing driver. But the more and more he's at Mercedes, the more and more he's just becoming a giant dick.
Yeah, I've said this before multiple times. George Russell is becoming the supervillain of the Formula One. Just the way he looks, the way he talks. He's just a smug, like, he's got a slappable face, does he not?
Yes, he's very posh.
Very posh. So yeah, I don't like George Russell as a person. This made me like him even less as a racer, and not just because he did it to Max. He's done it multiple times, and I'm not saying he's a danger to Formula One, but he's aggressive. But I also kind of like that. I like how aggressive he is. That's the aggressiveness, not to the same degree necessarily. That's the aggressiveness that Max has. I think in the future we could be looking at George Russell versus Max Verstappen for the World Championship one day. Not today, but one day soon.
This also says that next time him and George Russell are getting close, Max is not holding back, because that's one of the things. When we saw Max and Charles go at it last year when they were more on equal grounds, a lot of people were saying, well, look at this. This is how you race. Max and Hamilton weren't racing quite nicely to each other because they both knew the other's not giving in and the other will do whatever it takes to win. All right, because Hamilton's not a goody two-shoes. All right, we got to put that in.
Oh, yeah, no. For sure. He's broken several rules in his life.
Yes, same with Michael Schumacher. Nobody's accused him of being an angel. He was a dick on the track. But he gave Charles respect, and he drove Charles with respect. Yes, he would sometimes, just pinch him in a corner or something like that, but he always left them room, and he always had that kind of respect. And we saw that when Hamilton and Verstappen got at it, like in Brazil, they didn't hold any punches. They raced each other hard. So now he's going to do the same thing to George Russell, and I can already tell you, George Russell will be complaining. He will not shut up when Max Verstappen is hard on him.
Do you remember when Max, a couple years ago, when Max almost killed Lewis? Do you remember that?
Yes, I also remember the time that Lewis almost killed Max.
That was, it was back and forth a few times. So, but anyway, let's get on to the race review.
All right, when the race started, Esteban Ocon and Nico Hülkenberg start from the pit lane. When the lights go off, Charles Leclerc takes off, and he actually manages to keep P1 as Max Verstappen tries to cut him off into turn 1, but he's a day late and $1 short. Bottas is sandwiched going into turn 3, and it forces him to brake or get pushed into the wall. Unfortunately, Kevin Magnussen was behind him doing really good as he had gotten up by 3 places in the first 2 corners, but that brake check, which was unintentional, made him run into the back of that Alfa Romeo, and like always, Kevin Magnussen suffers front wing damage. Funny enough, it was Baku last year that began the front wing curse for Kevin Magnussen. That man and front wing damage are just synonymous. I don't think he can go like 2 or 3 races without getting front wing damage. Anyway, on lap 4, Charles loses the lead to Max, and Checo passes Charles for P2 into turn 1 on lap 6. Lance Stroll got on the radio and he says, because he's right behind Fernando Alonso, he won't pass or attack him as long as they both play the same game. So now Lance is willing to, be like, all right, we gotta work as a team right now. We are in a position that we've never been in, And if we want to get podiums, if we want to get lots of points, let's work as a team. I won't fuck you over as long as you don't fuck me over. And I think that's a great thing to do. So at this point, Max is in front and Checo is behind him. And they're both trading in fastest laps. Like, I don't think it's a joke at this point when people say that Checo is the king of the streets, because he is kind of in a way pushing himself to a degree we've never seen before. And that's fucking amazing. Anyway, a few laps later, Nick DeVries once again hits the wall and breaks the left suspension arm, and he is forced to retire. And we actually didn't know what happened right away. Like, people were like, is he having an engine failure? Did he just understeer into the corner and he's trying to back up? Like, what's going on? At this point, Max and Checo were going into the main straight, and they were like, okay, this is an opportunity to pit. So they pit Max first because, you know, he's in first place and he's the number one driver. He gets preference. If it was the other way around, Checo would pit. And it actually screwed him over, because as soon as that happened, safety car comes out. So when a safety car comes out, everybody's racing at a reduced speed, all right? And you cannot overtake, you cannot speed up, you cannot do anything except just warm up your tires. So this gives Checo a free pit stop. So Checo pits in and he's out before the other two Ferraris behind him even get a chance to get into their pit boxes. So Checo comes out in first place. Charles pits, he comes out, and Max is in third place. All right. Also, at this point, Lance Stroll pits, and so does George Russell. And you know what George Russell does? They get into the pit lane, all right, and he drives right next to Lance Stroll in the pit lane. And then he got into his pit box, and the announcer said, that's kind of teetering on the line. Like, is he going to get in trouble? And the FIA kind of investigated. They were like, no, it's fine and all that. But I don't know what George was doing. It was kind of irresponsible and stupid. And as we'll explain at the end, it's not the only time there was a bit of controversy in the pit lane. But anyway, they go back to racing. Max and Checo are just going back and forth. And Max is actually can't keep up with Checo. Like, he tries to close the gap between him and Checo. But as soon as Checo realizes Max is getting faster, Checo goes faster. And they go at it back and forth. And Max is like 2 seconds off from Checo.
He's the Minister of Defense for a reason.
Yes, and he's better on his tires than Max. Besides that, there wasn't really much to the race itself. Like, quite honestly, it was a really boring race. On lap 37, Joe pits and retires the car. On lap 51, final lap of the race, everybody's like going, okay, wait a minute. Esteban Ocon hasn't pitted. He's been on the hard tires the entire time, and he hasn't pitted at all. And they're like, he can't pit right now, can he? And then they're having an interview with one of the reporters who was in the pit lane. And he's like, well, a bunch of people are coming out from the pit lane in the Red Bull garage. All the mechanics are coming out, and they're getting on the fence and climbing it and cheering on for when Checo comes on, which, by the way, was made illegal by the FIA, and they still broke the rule. You can't climb the fence. You can't even go there. They still did it. But there are people coming out, FIA officials, who are setting up the barricade and the fences for, you know, the Parc Ferme. When they park the cars, and, you know, people celebrate that, you know, Max has his place, Checo has his place, Charles has a place, first, second, third, and all that. And there's photographers there, and the announcers are just calling it. And they're like, there's no way they're coming in. It's like, oh my God, they're pitting him right now. And Esteban Ocon comes in. And if you haven't seen the pit lane for Baku, think about it like this. You deviate from the straight, and then you kind of go a right and the left. And when you go to the left, it's a blind corner. So you don't see what's going on. And all these people who are taking photographs, they have to jump out the way as Esteban Ocon comes in at 50 miles an hour. And he actually almost runs over a guy. But the announcers are losing their minds. They're going, what the fuck are they doing? How is this even fucking allowed? And it was an oversight by the FIA, and it was a stupidity by Alpine, because they're seeing this. Esteban Ocon at no point can see who's in the pit lane, and he's relying on his team. And his team sees this because the people from the FIA are setting up all this stuff before the Alpine mechanics come out to the pit. And the announcer, like I said, the announcers are just losing their mind. And they're going, what the fuck? What are you doing? So that's the big controversy. You know, what's going to happen? Who's going to get fired? Who's going to get fined? Is the FIA going to fine itself? They're definitely going to fine Alpine. That's for damn sure. But it's one of those acts where you're like, how the fuck are you allowed? How the fuck does this happen in 2023? This is something from like the 80s or 90s we haven't even seen since then. So, yeah. Checo wins. Max comes second. Third comes Charles, with 1 second behind him being Fernando Alonso. And that is the race in Baku. What do you think? Especially, what do you think about the stupidity that Alpine did?
Definitely somebody has to get fired. Not necessarily Ocon, but...
Ocon did not have anything to do with that. He was just like, they told him to come into the box. He's like, okay. And then in an interview, he's like, yeah, I freaked out. I did not expect people to be there. I'm glad nobody got hurt.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, it is what it is. Maybe their race director gets fired or somebody, but, you know, it is what it is. Just glad nobody got hurt. Good job for Checo. Wait, should we say it? Vamos, Checo! Yeah, Checo Perez wins again. He's only like, 6 points behind Max for the World Championship standings?
Yep, 6 points. And the good thing is Christian Horner said that Checo and Max are free to race each other. So we might see that title fight. And that's 2 wins for Max, 2 wins for Checo. Is this going to be the fight? Are we going to see Checo Perez do the unthinkable and take down Red Bull's golden boy?
I think he can. I think he absolutely can.
That's another thing. I'm glad he's proving me wrong, because I've always said Checo's a great driver. He's not a world champion material driver, but if he does the unthinkable, fuck, man, that'd be a huge upset. And I mean, at least it gives us something entertaining, because let's be honest, Ferrari is shit. 11 seconds is the difference between Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc. 11 fucking seconds. That doesn't sound like a lot, but it is in motorsports. Like, when Hamilton and Verstappen were racing, they were less than half a second apart. Now we're talking about an 11-second gap. Like, Ferrari is not competitive at all.
No, they're pretty much out of this. So,
but yeah, that was our race review, and now we are going to do a little bit of an interview between us two. And I want to start it out by asking you, what do you think about us doing this for over a year? 33 episodes, 3 pilots, multiple trailers, and multiple what the fuck are we doing?
Yeah, we're going to keep this short because I think we're running a little long here. But yeah, I mean, I think we've definitely gotten a lot better over the year, especially compared to the pilot episode.
Not even the Waterboy pilot, but for the other one.
The other one. But yeah, I mean, we'll see how things keep going, and hopefully it'll just get a lot better from here.
Hopefully will. We've definitely become better at audio quality wise. It's not perfect, but we've gone from having 2 microphones that sounded like shit to just having the one microphone that sounds good, but we're in a room that hasn't been treated acoustically. But it's still, we sound good. We sound better. And I think one of the things I've noticed is we've become very much more confident in doing this. I remember the first time we did this like the Waterboy pilot, we were like, you see, and we would lose a train of thoughts. And we kind of still do that from time to time, but it's definitely better.
Oh yeah. And I mean, you know, we get to the point where like we don't even think about it. Now it's just us having a conversation about nondescript motorsports, NFL, Formula One, all that kind of stuff. So
yeah, and hopefully we get to go another year of doing this shit. Maybe we finally get that second microphone we've been saying we should get. And, you know, depending on how things are doing, me and a friend of mine, actually the 3rd string Waterboy, Wes and I are probably thinking about doing a recording studio. So we might actually have a nice audio quality someday down the line. But let me ask you this. did you actually believe that we would be 1 year in, or at least 33 weeks in to doing this? Like, did you think that we were gonna go past doing this for like 3 weeks?
I didn't even think we were going to make it past the first week.
It was a rough week. Let's be honest. There's also that second episode that we have never been able to get.
Yeah, the missing second episode. That's really what made me think we were never going to do another one. But yeah.
But yeah, I've been liking them. I've been liking doing this. We finally have Davis not saying that the Waterboy is coming to YouTube.
It still is. It's in the works. It's just a long-term plan.
He's working on it, and we never released those other podcasts that we were, saying it's coming out, and just kind of like the later half of the podcast, it died with a whimper.
Exactly.
But we're actually still working on them. Cold Case Cafe is set to debut this time on October 31st, and if it doesn't debut this time around, we're just
next October 31st. One of the next coming October 31st, maybe in like 5 years. We'll see.
Yeah, but I am working on it. I've got a guy helping me work on it, so maybe something comes from it. Maybe.
But anyway, I'm ready to sign us off. Are you ready for me to sign us off?
Sign us off, white boy.
Thank you guys for listening to this episode of the Waterboy Experience, and happy 1 year anniversary. Peace.
Second and goal just outside the 10. Hart tips it in, and it's Waller. He spins into the end zone for the touchdown. Watching greatness on one end. In LeBron, there's a dude